But if you start with Antonio Banderas instead of Ryan Gosling, and then it doesn't really sell as well.
Right.
And he never quite jumped. So the question is, where along the line did he actually have his career-defining role?
Well, so one thing I want to mention about this before we get into that is that it really feels like the biggest inhibitor to Antonio Banderas' career was that he was coming up in a time where we were only interested in leading white men or leading black men.
Yeah.
It really did seem that way.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
we had the Will Smiths, we had the Denzels, and then we had everyone else that was white. But the thing is there weren't a lot of Hispanic Americans or like this you know, people like me where you can play a bunch of different roles,
Sure.
different ethnicities, being the leads in feature films. And Antonio Banderas not making it through to that A-list level, it feels like it has to have been kind of that racism. I hate to say it, but it really feels like it because he had it. He had the looks, sexiest man alive. He had the talent.
Yeah.
He was booking the jobs. People like working with him, like the whole thing. Unless there's something that I'm just missing, I can't put my finger on it.
Well, it's weird too, because you look at Zorro and the movie did well financially. We're going to talk about it in a second, but like that's 1998. So there should have been, the proof was there for him to be the guy, the leading guy in movies. You know, it's like, and it also makes you wonder, you look at Wesley Snipes as a guy, you were just talking about Will Smith and you were talking about Denzel.
Right. He
Snipes,
was a lead.
He made
Big.
Blade the same year as this, right? Blade comes out in 98, does pretty well, right? So he's a black superhero. He makes Blade 2 4 years later. Then he makes Blade 3. So he stuck with that character. And he did.
And Blade is, and Wesley Snipes is an exponentially worse actor than Antonio Banderas.
Speak for you.
I mean, have you seen movies?
But the point is, you know, he was able to ride that character to a pretty solid career as a very rich producer. He did very well for himself. You know, you wonder, like, what if instead of waiting, because when does Legend of Zorro come out? I want to say they waited
I think
too
it's
long.
like 3 years later. Or no, it's like 2000.
I think it's like 6 years later. I was going to say it's like 2004.
It's like 2004 or 5.
That feels like they waited.
Or 2003? It's 3.
Could be 2003.
I don't know.
My guess would be 2004, but it's at least 5 years later. I'm pretty sure, unless
Right.
Ryan, can you
2005.
2005.
Yeah, wow.
7 years later, they waited 7 years to make the sequel to this movie,
And I haven't seen it. And I love this movie.
and I've heard it's bad.
Yep.
And I think if you really are honest with yourself, the biggest thing that hurt his career is that he did not make the sequel to this movie 2 years later.
Yeah.
Because The Mummy Returns came out 2 years later, and it was a big deal, and people love that franchise. If this had the sequel come out, say 3 years after the first one, I actually think this is so clearly his career-defining role, and I think his career goes in a different direction.
Hey Popcorn Talk fans, if you like this clip, be sure to check out the link in the description below to see the whole episode. Also, we'd appreciate it if you'd like this video and comment your thoughts. No matter what you're a fan of, we have a show for you. See you at the movies.